What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the CRW podcast here for episode 233 as we get set to make our preview and predictions for the upcoming game against BYU. After a short week, West Virginia heads out to Provo for a late Friday night kick. Get your nap in because West Virginia is not playing until 10:30 Eastern time on Friday night. So it's a late one, and we're going to get set to dive into everything surrounding the game, the matchups on each side. I'll give you guys my key to victory and my score prediction. And then, of course, we'll go around the Big 12, make some picks for the Week 6 games around the conference as well. You can see Brad and Steven out on assignment, not here for this episode. I think Steven avoided this one on purpose because he didn't want to show up here and, just show you guys how much he loves BYU, or he was kind of confused because he didn't know what to wear for the episode. He was like, should I wear a BYU shirt? Should I wear a BYU hat? I'm just giving him hell. You guys know Steven is, has a lot of respect for BYU or whatever, so I give him a little bit of hell about that. And I told him that coming up with this BYU preview episode. But really, just busy week, short week, hard to get the schedules to line up. So it's only me solo dolo for this one, but I will try and keep it brief so you guys won't hear me babble on too much. To give you guys a brief overview here heading into the thing, and then we'll talk about each side of the ball, okay? I appreciate you guys tuning into this one. Let's talk a little bit about this. So 2-3 West Virginia, 0-2 in the Big 12 conference right now, heads on the road to take on top 25 opponent, first top 25 opponent of the season, number 23 in the polls this week, BYU, and they're, of course, 4-0, and they're currently 1-0 in the Big 12 after taking down Colorado last week. Like we said, coming up Friday, October 3rd, 10:30 kick, and it's going to be on ESPN. As far as the series between West Virginia and BYU, only ever played 2 games to this point. West Virginia leads the series 2-0. West Virginia, of course, won the first Big 12 game back in 23 with that big 37-7 win. And then you guys remember the other matchup back in 2016 at FedEx Field when Skylar Howard outdueled Taysom Hill. Yeah, that's right. The NFL tight end was the BYU quarterback then. And that was a fun game, actually. West Virginia won that one 38-35. So 2 all-time meetings. This will be West Virginia's first trip out to Provo. So it'd be, interesting to check that out. I've heard that it's really a nice venue for, opposing fans. I've heard that they give out ice cream after like halftime or something like that, even to the opposing fans. So some nice touches there at BYU, and it's absolutely gorgeous. One of the most gorgeous stadiums in the country and a tough place to play to boot. So West Virginia, coming off a short week, going to have their hands full for multiple reasons. And of course, the Cougars are led by Kalani Sitake, the head coach there, entering his 10th season with BYU, and he's had a lot of success, especially here recently. Double-digit win seasons in 3 of the last 5 years. So it's kind of an overview of things heading into this one. Let's get a little bit more in detail here. Let's talk about each side of the ball. Let's start off here with when BYU's on offense versus the West Virginia defense, who, we really need the West Virginia defense to kind of revert back to the earlier season form, right? After having, a bad game last game. I know that it looks like a really bad game against Kansas, but I think that they were in a lot more bad positions. I would say the last game against Utah was their truly worst game. And I'm hoping that they bounce back in this one because we're going to need them. That's what's going to have to keep us in this game and keep this thing close if we're going to stay in it. I think is our defense going to have to show up, get some stops, and, keep us in this thing. So as far as the BYU offense they'll be going up against, though, the offensive coordinator there, they have a lot of continuity on this BYU staff. Both coordinators been there multiple years with Kalani Sitake, and Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator. He's been there. This will be his 8th season, so been there nearly the entire time that Sitake has. And they are, of course, breaking in a new quarterback, as we know, after Jake Retzlaff, after everything that happened, and then ends up transferring to Tulane. And they have a true freshman, Bear Bachmeyer, who wears number 47, funny enough, but a big-bodied quarterback there at 6'2", 220, dual threat type of guy. They're not really asking him to do a lot right now, or haven't yet to this point, as far as throwing downfield a ton, a lot of safe stuff for him, easy decisions, dink and dunk type of stuff, if you will. But he's also been very capable in the run game, which is what they've tried to lean on. That's what this BYU team's leaned on, is run game and defense. But one thing that I do want to point out here is that this is kind of the first inexperienced quarterback West Virginia will face this season. They faced all quarterbacks that have had a ton of experience. When you look, Ohio, of course, exclude Robert Morris from the conversation, but you look at Ohio, Parker Navarro, senior, been there a long time. You look at Kansas, Jalen Daniels, been there a long time. Holstein's in his second year, been in college football a while after transferring from Bama, second year starting, second year in the system at Pitt. And then, of course, last week, Devin Dampier yes, new to Utah, but been in college football a long time there and been with that offensive coordinator, Jason Beck. So this is the first time really all season, especially in a conference matchup and against another power conference team, that West Virginia is going up against a quarterback that's a little bit inexperienced. Now he's playing at home. That's going to help him out. But I think that, what we know about Zach Alley's defense is how he likes to mix things up, how he likes to try and catch people off guard. And when you're facing a true freshman like Bear Bachmeier, this could be the game where we finally see a little bit of that come to fruition. Maybe it leads to some turnovers. Maybe, you get a lot of pressure in the backfield. You get a lot of sacks. Maybe this is where Jamori Robinson really shows up. Interesting to watch this matchup specifically on Saturday or Friday, excuse me. That's just habit. Always thinking Saturday because every game's usually on Saturday. But on Friday, between Zach Alley and Aaron Roderick, because Aaron Roderick's going to want to protect the true freshman quarterback, and Zach Alley's going to want to get after him, going to want to confuse him. So I think that'll be an interesting chess match to watch in this game when we talk a little bit about the new BYU quarterback, which, funny enough, number 47 at quarterback. I don't think I've ever seen that before. But he's throwing for 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. He hasn't thrown an interception yet on the season. So, like I said, they've been protecting him, but he's been making, good decisions with the things they've been calling for him. Also could mean he's due, right? Could be due for one. He has 4 rushing touchdowns on the year, though, and he, is a threat on the ground. Like we talked about, he's coming off a near 100-yard game, actually, against Colorado. I think he had 15 carries, 98 yards, if I believe. So you may as well call that a 100-yard game if you're rounding up, right? So definitely have to be aware of his legs, and that's something we've dealt with a lot of the quarterbacks that we've faced. So that should be nothing new. But his cohort in the backfield is very talented as well, and we certainly have to do a better job of tackling if we want to have a good shot to stop LJ Martin, who's back at the running back position for the Cougars. He's already over 400 yards rushing on the season, and he's averaging over 7 yards per carry right now. Like I said, that's BYU's bread and butter right now, is getting it done on the ground and playing good, strong defense. So we're going to have to contain the run first, make them throw the football, and, when they do, we're going to have to really rally up and tackle, because it's going to be, swings, short passes, screens, things like that. We're going to have to rally up, tackle, and open space. And hopefully, if we show that we're covering that, we're playing tight on those guys, make them throw the ball a little bit downfield. And then that's when we can maybe make something happen and maybe get Bachmeier's first interception of the season. That'd be nice. But when he does go to the air, really, I think there's 2 top targets to worry about again, for the second straight week. We talked about it against Utah last week. How it was, Davis and Bentley that you need to worry about. And both those guys had really good games, unfortunately. This week, for BYU, it's Chase Roberts is the main worry receiver there, the senior 6'4" target. So, lengthy guy there, leads the team in both receiving yards and receiving touchdowns, has 3 TD grabs on the season. But the highest graded player on the BYU offense is actually the tight end Carson Ryan. And it's not a small sample size. He's been playing a ton, and he has an 87.7 offensive grade according to PFF, which is extremely high there. So nearly an 88 offensive grade for the tight end Carson Ryan, who's second on the team, right behind Roberts in yards and touchdowns. He has 2 touchdowns of his own on the season and nearly 200 receiving yards as well. So that's what you got to look for on the BYU offense, I think. And like I said, I'm interested to watch that matchup, see how Zach Alley attacks this thing. Some of the new pieces we saw may get some more reps. I think Nick Taylor may be at that field safety position now. Seems like they've been trying to find, the right guy there. And we knew Nick Taylor was kind of more of a corner, but we seen Boyce there early in the season. Then we went to Tarnew. And then last game we saw Tarnew and then Boyce. And then Taylor came in and really, played the best of the 3, ended up with the interception. So maybe we'll see more of him this week. Keep an eye on that safety position there. And like I said, the main thing I'm hoping here is we can get a little bit of pressure on Bear Bachmeier. Number 1, shut down the run. Number 2, get some quarterback pressures, cause some havoc. That's a good recipe for West Virginia in this one. I think they've got a chance as far as this matchup is concerned. I'm not going to say West Virginia has the edge, but I will at least call it a wash, because I think West Virginia has a chance going up against a true freshman quarterback. And I think that West Virginia will know going into this game that this is where they have to make hay if they want to stay in this one and make it a game for 4 quarters, keep it close, and have a chance in this one to come away with a victory at the end and still one on the road. The defense is going to have to be what propels us to that, in my opinion. So this is the matchup to watch. That's why I wanted to lead off with it. But we still have to talk about the other side, because definitely some interesting things to talk about there when the West Virginia offense goes up against this BYU defense. Of course, interesting for West Virginia because we're waiting to see who's back from injury. Sincere Bowers, Ty Edwards, sounds like it's possible. Who starts at quarterback? Is this where we see one of the freshmen finally start, Scotty Fox or Khalil Wilkins? I would say Khalil Wilkins seems like maybe the favorite to be the starter on Friday. So, there's another change to look for. And then, of course, changes on the offensive line. I think they're coming. We'll see if they come immediately in the starting lineup, but I definitely am expecting more reps for Malik Agbo, more reps for Donovan Haslam. Those guys looked good when they got in there. So I think that's what you'll see as far as West Virginia is concerned and why it's interesting there. But it's also interesting because I don't want to be too negative here. You guys know me. I try and throw on the gold and blue glass to keep it positive as much as possible. But West Virginia struggled on the road, right? I mean, 2 road games. We scored 10 points against Ohio. We scored 10 points against Kansas. And the reason I'm worried about that is because BYU's defense is better than Kansas. BYU's defense is better than Ohio's. BYU's defense has been very good this season, and West Virginia has not been good offensively on the road. BYU, in their first 3 non-conference games of the season, only gave up 16 points. So, they went and played Colorado last week, gave up 21, I believe, was what they gave up there, but that was on the road. So, look at home. They've been very stellar defensively, and they've been, grading out really highly in the conference defensively, and really good rush defense as well. I think they're only giving up like 2.3 yards per carry. So that's the matchup to watch there. Can West Virginia find a way to run the ball, as West Virginia is going to need to do? That's the centerpiece of the offense against what's been a very stingy BYU run defense. And the BYU defensive coordinator and Jay Hill, he's been phenomenal. He's his 4th season here. He was like a head coach at Weber State before coming to BYU, where he was there at Weber State from 2014 through 2022, but then came to BYU in 23, and since then has really just developed that defense into one of the Big 12's very best throughout his time there. And I think he's a well-respected coordinator in the conference because of it. And they got some players on that defense, man. Couple of linebackers that really stand out. Jack Kelly being one, the senior leader, back again, leads the team in total tackles with 19 and leads the team in sacks with 4. By the way, over a 90 pass rush grade on PFF thus far this season. That's incredible. And what's even more incredible, that's not the highest pass rush grade on the BYU defense. That would belong to linebacker Isaiah Glasker. 6'5", 240 pounds. This guy is a monster. 17 tackles, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, an interception on the season already, and he has a 92 pass rush grade. So something to be concerned about there for sure. As we know, West Virginia not necessarily been the best in pass protection and the best in offensive line in general. So we definitely going to have to do a better job of that in this game and watch out for those guys if we do have to drop back and throw it. That's why I think early down success is going to be paramount in this game. We're going to need to find a way to run the ball on early downs, not get ourselves caught in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10 and longer, like we've seemed to be stuck in a lot throughout this season. I think early down success is going to be key. Because if we find ourselves in those situations where they can pin their ears back, I'm a little bit worried about that. Even with some of the changes on the offensive line that I think could improve some things there. The BYU defense is really good. They're good at getting after the passer. We talked about them being good against the run as well. So, West Virginia going to have to find a way. Going to have to try and find a way. But, hey, stranger things have happened, right? Stranger things have happened. West Virginia is going to find themselves at some point this season and find a way to continue to be more consistent offensively. That's what they're searching for right now, is that consistency on offense to be able to put drives together and not just stall out, utilize this up-tempo system to our advantage instead of to our detriment, like it's been at some points, thus far throughout this season. And the last player I want to talk about on that BYU defense is defensive back Evan Johnson, who leads the team with 2 interceptions and is the second highest graded player on that defense with an 84 grade, also possesses an 85 coverage grade per PFF. So he's definitely been stingy when he's been out back there in coverage. We'll see who gets the start for West Virginia at quarterback. I think you'll definitely see Khalil Wilkins. You might see Scotty Fox. We'll see about Max Brown and Jalen Henderson, because we know they were both a little bit banged up. That's why I'm really leaning towards Khalil Wilkins being the starter here. And I would love to see what Khalil Wilkins could do with, a lot more series under his belt. We've seen him come in, last week was the most extensive action we've seen, and that was the most that we were all kind of had our heads turned a little bit like, okay, there's a little something to this redshirt freshman here. So I would like to see what he does, with more extensive action. Now, with that being said, going on the road against what's been one of the best defenses in the conference, one of the tougher atmospheres in the conference, to play a late game on a short week on a Friday night is no easy task for a freshman quarterback. So, I think that if you do see a lot of Khalil Wilkins, if he makes the start, if you do see Scotty Fox, that shows you how much that West Virginia believes in these freshman quarterbacks and the potential that they have for the future. And if they come out there and, don't look rattled at all and look calm, cool, and collected and even perform well, that says even more. And I think that's something to be really impressed by. So that's one thing I'm keeping an eye on this side of the ball. And I think, like I said, West Virginia has to find a way to have success on those early downs. And to me, that means running the football. So I'm hoping that if we make those changes on the offensive line that we're expecting, that helps. I'm hoping maybe we get Ty Edwards back. That'll help. Deere Hubbard looked good in his action. And, if since your Bowers can play, I think you got, a handful of running backs now that you could maybe count upon, along with some really, mobile quarterbacks, because all the quarterbacks that we have left now, they're going to play are mobile. Maybe you're able to find a way to run the football, put some drives together, and be more consistent, because that's a key for this offense as well, is just stay on the field at least a little. Even if you're not putting a scoring drive together, flip field position and give your defense a little bit of a breather would be great. And running the football is going to allow us to do that, keep us out of those third and long situations. But we'll see what happens. This right here is definitely advantage BYU. I hate to say it. A lot of question marks for West Virginia as far as personnel. We know what we're battling injury-wise. It's a short week, and like we said about, the stats right there, I won't go over them again, but the standout pass rush grades from the linebackers and what's been one of the best run defenses in the Big 12 Conference and maybe in the country up to this point, and they haven't given up, a ton of points at home. So advantage BYU here, unfortunately. Special teams, we'll keep an eye on. I don't really break it down a ton on the preview episodes, but West Virginia's been certainly a mixed bag at best lately with special teams. So keep an eye on that as well. We'll see who ends up getting the advantage there, because that's always, the hidden one to watch for. But with that being said, I promised you guys I'd keep it as brief as possible. So let's go ahead. Let's get to the key to victory for me in this one. My key, I kind of teased it up there, I think, with what I was talking about earlier in the show when we were talking about the West Virginia defense, because I think it's the defense reverting back to that form that they had, early on in the season, and really just keeping this game close, getting stops, allowing the West Virginia offense, if they have some of these new pieces involved, to kind of find their footing, to build up that chemistry throughout this game, to where if they don't get off to that fast start like we're hoping that they do, it stays close. Hold BYU to a field goal or two. It's 3-0, it's 6-0. West Virginia's within striking distance until that offense can, get their sea legs together, so to speak, right? And get those underneath them and continue to, improve with a lot of the young guys. You may be playing some more underclassmen in this game and some guys making first-time starts as well. I think the defense for West Virginia is the major key. We have to have a better performance from our defense. We have to tackle better. If we can get after the passer, that's great. And this is a game where if our defense doesn't force any turnovers, I don't know if we'll be able to win it. So I think the defense reverting it back to their early season form and helping us keep this game close is my key in this one. Score prediction. Oh, man, do I think that will happen? I'm not going to lie. I think that Zach Alley, like Coach Rod said, following the game against Utah, he's going to get it fixed. I think that they've simplified some things. They talked about that in Coach Rod's press conference, even how they're simplifying things on both sides of the ball to try and help them, be better. So I think the defense will perform better, but it's a short week. We talked about the bad situation heading into the Kansas game, and you wondered if you'd face a worse situation. This might be worse, just because short week, you still have the injury concerns, you still have question marks on personnel, and you haven't played good on the road at all. And this is the toughest environment you're going to play in yet, against the best defense you faced on the road yet. So despite the fact that I think that West Virginia's defense will play better, and I do have some confidence that West Virginia will find a way to make some plays offensively with some of that personnel that we talked about earlier. You scored 10 on the road against Ohio. You scored 10 on the road against Kansas. And like I said, this BYU defense is better. So I don't know if you'll get that. And I hope I'm wrong here. But I've got to score an under 10 in this one, because that BYU defense, it worries me. I think it's a bad matchup at a bad time. And so unfortunately, I've got BYU winning this one 24-7. Call it like I see it, man. Hopefully I'm wrong and the offense comes out, performs better. Offense comes out and puts, a couple touchdowns on the board. If the offense can find a way to score near 20 points somehow, I think we could have a chance in this game, because I feel confident that it's going to be that type of low scoring game. If we can, find a way to get near 20, we may have a chance, but with our history on the road, until they show me they can do it, it's kind of hard to predict them to do it, right? So unfortunately, my prediction 24-7, a BYU win on Friday night. Fingers crossed that I'm wrong, guys, and I'd love to be proven wrong and this team come out, make a statement, surprise everyone, with the only showcase, the only game in the conference, going on Friday night and being on ESPN. Yes, it's late, but there'll be eyes on us, so it'd be a good game to come out and perform better than we have on the road yet this season. So let's hope that it happens. That's me, picking with my head and not with my heart, right? My heart says, let's go Mountaineers, let's go pull an upset. But logically, that's the prediction I have to make, unfortunately. But that'll wrap up my discussion on this game as far as the BYU preview side is concerned. Want to get to our Around the Big 12 segment to close out the episode here on 233 on the CRW podcast. But before I do, just a quick thank you to guys for tuning in. I always appreciate you guys tuning into our episodes each week here, our game previews and our game reviews, whether you watch them on YouTube or listen to them on the audio side. You can find us on any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the Country Roads Webcast there. And if you listen there, leave us a rating. That helps us out. And you guys on YouTube can really help us out a ton just by taking a quick second, hitting that thumbs up button. This video hit that algorithm, find more Mountaineer football fans like yourself that then can subscribe to this channel and get these podcast episodes directly into their feed every week. And shout out to our friends over at WVSportsNow.com for hosting our episodes on their website as well. So with that being said, and no further ado, let's hit our final segment. Let's take a look around the Big 12, make some picks in these Week 6 games as I pull up the schedule here. Like I said, West Virginia and BYU, the only Friday night game. Talked about that one there. Then we move into our Saturday slate where we got some really good matchups, actually. It was tough for me to decide on a game of the week this week. I went with one of the later kick games, but I think, either one of these noon games could have been a candidate, particularly Iowa State and Cincy after, the upset, in my opinion, what Cincy pulled over Kansas last week and now getting to have Iowa State come in there. But before we get there, let's talk a little Kansas State-Baylor matchup in Waco at noon on ESPN+. This is one of those things that's just funny how the season develops, right? Because a month ago, early in the season, preseason, I'd said Kansas State wins this game. And then about 2 weeks ago, I'd have said Baylor easily wins this game. Now, after seeing Kansas State look a little bit more like what we thought they might look like this season last week, it's a little bit more of a toss-up in my opinion. But despite that, I'm still going to go ahead and give the advantage to Baylor. One, it's in Waco. I think that they can score a little bit more. They've shown to be a little bit more consistent on offense this season. Now, their defense has been suspect at times, but it seems like they may have got that corrected a little bit in recent weeks. So I think Baylor finds a way, but I think this will be, a barn burner, guys. I think this will be a really good game. I'm going to go with the Bears. Then Iowa State and Cincy. Like I said, I considered this one as game of the week this week. It's at noon. They're playing in Cincy on ESPN2. Cincinnati with the big win over Kansas last week. Of course, Iowa State comes into this one, top 15 team in the country. They are definitely very much a contender for the Big 12 championship. But Cincinnati, is coming in this one 3-1, and the loss was a close one against another Power 5 opponent. They beat Kansas last week. They're 1-0 in the Big 12, and if they would find a way to pull this upset, they'd be 2-0 in the conference with a win over what a lot of people consider one of the best 2 or 3 teams in the conference. So this is a huge game to keep an eye on. Corleone on the Cincinnati defense is really good. I've been surprised by Scott Satterfield and what they've done. With that being said, Iowa State's going to rock in there and get the win, in my opinion. Could be proved wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But I got faith in the Cyclones, Rocco Becht, to go in there to Cincy and get a win in that one. So going with the road team in that one. So I took a home team in the first nooner and then the road team in the second one. Moving on, Oklahoma State at Arizona. 3 o'clock Eastern kick. This one's on TNT and on HBO Max. I hope we get a TNT and HBO Max game this season. I want to see that presentation. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. Maybe on Saturday I'll try and watch that game just to see it. Get a little preview in case we do. Oklahoma State, I was actually a little bit impressed with how hungry they kind of came out and played with new interim coach Doug Meacham. But I think Arizona playing at home will do enough to win this game. I mean, they're favored by nearly as much as BYU's favored against us, and I'm sure they'll probably win it by double digits, I'd say. So I'm giving me the Wildcats in that one. And then here is the game of the week right there. So we're going to go past that one next. I can't wait to talk about it, though, guys, but we'll always save the game of the week for last. So let's go down here to Colorado and TCU, 7:30 Eastern kick on Fox. TCU, man. I mean, I think Colorado, I was actually surprised with how well they played against BYU. They were leading for a decent portion of that game, and they scored more than a lot of teams had on BYU that this season. But they were playing at home, and I credit a little bit of that to that, especially after BYU was coming off having to travel all the way to East Carolina prior to that. So a couple of different things going into there. But Colorado could hang with TCU. We'll see, but I think TCU wins this one fairly easily. Give me the Horned Frogs. And then the nightcap, Kansas and UCF, 7:30 Eastern in the Bounce House on ESPN2. This game will probably tell us a lot about these two teams because after we played Kansas, I was like, damn, they may be a contender this year. But then after seeing them lose to Cincy, I'm like, oh, maybe we're just really far off right now. And if you're using the eye test, I think you'd probably agree with that. But UCF, I really don't know. I think the verdict's still out on them. They are playing at home, and the Bounce House is tough. It's a night game in the Bounce House at that. But I think Kansas gets a bounce back win. Give me a road team here. Give me a road win here in a night game. Give me the Jayhawks to go into the Bounce House and get a dub. I think they bounce back. And then that brings us to the game of the week here in week 6. And this is a showdown, guys. Texas Tech and Houston. And really, I think this is a big-time showdown because obviously Texas Tech proved that they are for real with what they did against Utah, especially after seeing us play Utah. But I think this is going to tell us, Willie Fritz is a good coach. I think the Houston defense is good, and it seems like he's got this thing aimed for a quick turnaround, really quick. But how close are they to being a team that not only is a team that looks like they've turned things around, but a team that could compete with the top teams in this conference? Because they're playing a home night game at 7 Eastern kick on ESPN against the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who I think are all the way up to number 11 in the country. So borderline top 10 team here. And Texas Tech looks phenomenal in that game against Utah, and that was on the road. So if they go into Houston and dominate the same way, that tells me something with them being, a team on the road that's doing that. And, the $40 million they spent on the roster, we've said it here and we say it again, it definitely seems to be paying dividends. I'd love to pick Houston and pull for the underdog in this one. That'd be crazy if Houston could pull it off. But, got to go with my head yet again here. And I think Texas Tech wins it. But I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a close game, guys. And, if anyone can slow down that Texas Tech offense a little bit, maybe it's the Houston defense. And how funny would it be to see a Texas Tech-Houston game that's a defensive battle? I think that's very much possible. This is definitely the best Texas Tech defense we've seen in a long time. So keep an eye on that one to see if it does end up being a defensive battle. That'd be hilarious. But it could go either way. Both teams have shown the capability to do both things. But I think Texas Tech's offense is a little bit better, so they're going to get it done. Give me the Red Raiders in our game of the week here. In week 6, as we wrap up our look around the Big 12 Conference, which brings us to the point where we're putting a bow on this episode as well, guys. Really appreciate you guys yet again for tuning into this one. Can never thank you guys enough. Be on the lookout for our live stream, which will be out on Thursday night this week on our YouTube channel. Come over there, check that out. That's your chance to come share your prediction for the game. We always like to do those on either Thursday or Friday night. Get your all's thoughts on the upcoming game after you've heard ours earlier in the week on our preview podcast episode. But appreciate you guys, bearing through this one with it just being me alone. Hopefully I didn't drone on too much, make your eyes glaze over or anything crazy like that. Hopefully you still enjoyed it. But Steven and Brad will be back soon for a future episode. Hopefully they'll be back on the live stream on Thursday, and we can get some of our bits back together, get a little bit more comedy in the episode when we can have a little bit more back and forth, right? So I know you guys enjoy that, and I'm looking forward to that as well. Always enjoy it too. But hopefully we'll get to enjoy a good performance by the Mountaineers on Friday night as well. If anyone needs a bounce back in the conference, it's us, man. Let's have a game where we come out and really outperform people's expectations, because now's the time to do it. I think I said this on the Utah review a little bit. When does West Virginia perform best? When they're the underdogs, when everyone's counting them out, when the deck's stacked against them. So this is one of those situations, man. And you got a lot of new faces, a lot of new young guys. Hey, you can come out, you can step up, you can prove yourself, make a name for yourself, and have a good performance and pull a shocker. Let's hope it happens on Friday night. Either way, excited for another chance to get to watch the West Virginia Mountaineers football team. As always, I'm Jorden Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those